In higher ed, we're all looking for big wins, but reducing a 75% application abandonment rate and achieving a 90% conversion rate, that's next level transformation. Michael Bettersworth, CMO at Texas State Technical College, shares how they achieved this by streamlining the application process with Element 451.
Our Element journey began out of a necessity while we were switching to a new SIS, and the application process was going to pose some real usability issues for us. We felt that application was going to hamper our enrollment. So we began quickly to evaluate different CRMs, different applications. So for context on that, our conversion rate with the prior application had about 75% abandonment of people clicking apply to submit. And the first weeks after going live with Element, we saw an 80% conversion, and that's now up to 90. So improving the usability of that application on the front end process has had a significant advance in our intake.
When technology works for students, it works for you. Visit element451.com to see how simplifying the application process with artificial intelligence will lead to significant results for your institution.
Hit it! That's what I'm talking about. Wait!
Okay, now, from the beginning.
Hit it, boys.
Welcome to Strategic Storytelling, the art and science of brand narratives, a special 5-part strategic storytelling pulse check series brought to you by Enrollify and Element 451. I'm Maria Kuntz, a strategic marketing communications leader with over 15 years of experience advancing institutional reputations and access to higher education. Join me for conversations with seasoned leaders to explore why every message should be rooted in strategy, how to build and lead a storytelling-focused team, the role of AI in enhancing narratives, multicultural storytelling for authentic connections, and the synergy between creative and storytelling strategies. Our goal is to inspire you to uncover and amplify the most impactful messages, doing more with less by adopting a strategic, streamlined approach to content creation. Now, let's dive into today's episode. Welcome to Strategic Storytelling, the art and science of brand narratives, where we explore storytelling and strategic communications in higher education. I'm your host, Maria Kuntz, and today I'm thrilled to welcome Christian Ponce, the Associate Vice President for Marketing at Old Dominion University. At ODU, Christian leads initiatives to enhance the university's brand and engagement strategies. With a robust background in multicultural marketing, Christian emphasizes authentic engagement and accessibility to meet the diverse needs of various demographics. He's recognized for his commitment to breaking down cultural barriers and fostering inclusivity in higher education marketing. His expertise includes developing strategies that resonate with multicultural audiences, ensuring that marketing efforts are both inclusive and effective. Christian, welcome to the podcast.
Maria, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I just can't wait to dive into this conversation with you and share all of your knowledge and expertise with our listeners. Well, let's dive in. I have to say, knowing that it's your 30-year anniversary of arriving in the U.S. as an international student, it's really incredible to me right now because my niece just arrived from Argentina and she's living with us for 6 weeks. And for folks who maybe haven't lived or studied or moved abroad, it is such a sort of a precious moment. There's so much changing and things happening. You're learning so much. And so congratulations. What an anniversary, an important anniversary.
Absolutely.
To mark.
January 7th, 1995 is when.
Yeah.
And January 9th,
Beautiful.
class started.
Yeah.
Came for a spring semester. Never going to forget that.
Yeah. And here you are.
Yes.
So, you're really passionate about marketing and multicultural marketing. Are there any key moments, stories from your career that really shaped how you approach storytelling and brand marketing?
Yes. I love this question because I never thought it that way until I saw this question. And I come back to 2014, almost 11 years ago. I was working for another university. I was Associate VP of Marketing and Recruitment. But the people from Institutional Advancement called me and they said, hey, we are working on our end of the year appeal letter. Would you like to partner with us and see what we can do together? And I said, absolutely. And I asked him, what have you done And basically, their approach was like very many institutions at the time did. They had a request info card with one-page letter, and basically they have an ask, right?
Dense text, right?
Yeah, text letter, uh, card, like give and for scholarships and small letter. And I said, well, would you consider giving a story about one of your students and why you do this? And they said, absolutely. So because I was in admissions, in recruitment, I knew who was coming in and what stories there were. So there was a story of a guy called Eduardo. Eduardo went from his native country in South America to Spain, meet his wife in Spain, lived in Spain, moved to Denmark, became a very successful marketing executive for an international multinational Danish company. And then being there, he felt a call to ministry, but he didn't know how to go and pursue that. And then from Denmark, he came all the way to Ashland, Ohio to attend seminary. And that's the story I wrote. And I said, your dollar supports people like Eduardo to transform lives. The impact of that story went increased 10 times fold. I kid you not.
I believe it. I mean, stories are what people connect to. I saw Joe Master on a different podcast just now talking about, the data. We can use so much data, but it's about what connects to people's hearts and souls.
Right. So then I was like, I already have a hunch that I wanted to tell a story about it.
Mm-hmm.
And the results confirm that people buy into storytelling. They want to see impact. They don't want transactions, right? Think about it.
No.
No
Transactions, you can scan your palm at Whole Foods now and pay for your groceries. Like, that's transaction. Boom, boom, that connection.
It's connection and impact and doing something that matters.
Yeah. So on that note, I mean, what do you think the key components of a successful brand story are? What are a couple of the brand components?
So I would say that you need to understand what the values of your brand are. I think that you have to weave together strategy that incorporates the values of your brand, that incorporates the ethos of your institution, that incorporates your community, that incorporates your values, but also brand pillars, right? The brand pillars that support the entire brand structure, whether that is in your particular school, whether that is academic excellence or successful alumni stories or innovative research or whatever you want your brand to mean that you can support with proof. That needs to be weaved into your story. And hopefully based on that, obviously research needs to back that up and understanding that what you believe your brand is also is perceived by the audiences you want to reach. When you confirm that, you start thinking about, okay, how am I going to express this story creatively? Is it going to be in the written form? Are we going to have videos? Are we going to use social media? How are we going to tell the story to the world? And how are we going to use people to be the brand champions that we need them to be to communicate this message?
So moving on to the next question, let's talk a little bit about your expertise specifically in multicultural marketing. Can you, set the stage for what was happening at one of your previous institutions where you launched some really incredible multicultural marketing work?
Thank you so much. It's interesting because I do multicultural marketing now as part of everything I do. I just don't do multicultural marketing. And so I just believe that multicultural marketing needs to be integrated.
Is great marketing, right?
Absolutely. So I started my career in 2000 and in 2001 specifically in this type of work that we do. But I'll say that it is important that the brand that you have is able to connect with the audience you want. And in order to do that, you have to have three things, in my opinion: knowledge, understanding of the culture, emotional intelligence, and great cultural intelligence. If you don't have that in your team, it's going to be hard to be successful in multicultural marketing because, quite frankly, communication is about connecting people. Right? And people connect through values, people connect through things they share in common, or just they connect by understanding one another, right? So in my past role, I came, I was talking to my vice president and I said, hey, would you consider doing a multicultural marketing campaign as part of everything we do? Because I know that in that institution, DE&I and multicultural values and diversity and inclusion were things that were important. But I didn't see those things reflected in their marketing yet. So before we started, I kind of like I assessed where we were as a department, and quite frankly, we needed cultural intelligence training. I mean, quite frankly. So at the time, the leadership in that office in DD&I was changing, so we couldn't just bring a consultant or anything like that. So I launched something that I called a multicultural marketing series. And what that was is I would bring an expert to my team to talk about things that were multicultural or diverse in nature. For example, I brought in Latina students to talk about what does it mean to be a Hispanic, for example, Gen Z student. And I brought 3 students as a panel to talk about it. I brought a professor who was an expert on cultural intelligence and LGBTQI plus marketing. I brought a lady who was an Ohio representative of working in government and Latinas in government. So I brought a lot of experts in their areas. And after a year and a half of doing that, I felt that I did a survey. I surveyed the team and I felt that they were getting it. Okay, there's a lot out there that we need to understand. And when I got the budget, I got a budget to do a specific multicultural marketing campaign. Obviously, as part of everything we did, not something separate, but as part of everything we did, I created something we called the multicultural consulting group. And that was formed about 10 people from different areas of the college. I had people from alumni, people from admissions and enrollment, people from the diversity office, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, student life and whatever. At first we would meet monthly and we would just have conversations. I had a guided discussion. We talked about cultural things. What's important to you? What do you think your community values more? We're talking about values and motivators and what gets people going, et cetera, et cetera. And we had that group for about a year, to be candid. We started meeting monthly, and then eventually the meetings were organized quarterly. But what I want to tell you is what happens was that when we, with an ad agency, we launched our brand campaign that I was a part of too, because I was the senior director of marketing. We brought those mainstream concepts, and I'll speak what I mean by that, into this multicultural marketing group. And I would ask questions: does this resonate with you all? And they would say, no, no, it doesn't. Right? The concept was the power of will. That was the concept, and it worked really well in English, but for multicultural audiences. What they said is like, well, you're talking to an urban student, a Black urban in Chicago, a student that lives in urban Chicago, and you tell them you can do it on your own, can they? They need the resources, they need the support, they need the right district, the education, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I hate to say the right one because not all school districts have the same resources. So no, you cannot compare that student to the student who is in Dublin, Ohio, who has everything and whose parents give them $5,000 to get a tutor for the examinations and stuff like that. So we translated that, if you will, because the concept is wonderful, but we said, how about the power to change your world? And we adapted that and become extremely successful. All I'm going to say is that we had 2 target markets for that particular campaign. One was Chicago, the other one was New Haven, Connecticut. And those markets grew in enrollments. I'm not talking applications, enrollments, new students, 17 and 21% respectively. So it was fantastic. And because it was a true multicultural campaign, what that means is that we didn't do something separate. That was embedded into the general brand campaign, if that makes any sense. So the billboards have those type of concepts and language and the visual expressions of the students. And it was incredibly successful to the point that the board of trustees were so impressed that I do believe that due to that success, they tripled the budget for marketing.
That's incredible. I mean, that's
Yeah.
Speaks volumes of the impact of taking the time to really have those important conversations and take something that's good to great.
I always say that multicultural marketing and marketing, but especially multicultural marketing, it doesn't happen in a vacuum. This is not your
No.
multicultural marketing director creating a plan by them, on their own. No, they need to ask questions. They need to do research. And if you don't have the budget for research, you don't have to hire a research company. If you don't have, $1 million to go hire a research company, ask questions to the colleagues who are from the communities that you want to reach. It's okay. They will be happy to answer. That you ask questions,
Yeah.
and they will be more than happy to answer and give you cultural nuances that are important.
Well, I'd love to hear. I know that this campaign ended up becoming a bilingual campaign. And if you could talk a little about that transition into Spanish and the challenges you faced and the lessons you learned.
So some of the challenges I faced were, number one, the language and the concept itself, when it's working so well for the general audience. So when we talk about marketing in the United States, we have basically two avenues. One is what we call the mainstream market, which is basically English speaking, acculturated American market, which is the masses, right? And then you have multicultural marketing, which is marketing created aiming their messaging to multicultural audiences, people from different languages, can speak different languages, races, religions, sex orientation, et cetera, right? What's happening now is that our country is becoming the number one multicultural nation on earth. So those two streams are merging into one. So we're now saying, and if you go out there and look at multicultural marketing agencies, the new mainstream is multicultural. Right now, Generation Alpha, for the first time in history, this generation is 50% under white race. In other words, less than 50% of these individuals are white. So it's like the rest are multi-ethnic, multicultural, different races, and that's just going to continue. So the United States is going to be a country that is going to be made of multiple races, multiple cultures. So the challenge, to answer your question, is that when you're going through a English language created concept into a Spanish one, you have to approach it, and you have three options. One is you have to translate the words. People do it, and there's horrific examples of bad mistakes out there because the meaning of the translated words don't translate the meaning. For example, you have false cognates. In English, when you are embarrassed, you have a feeling of you're uncomfortable, but in Spanish, embarazada means you're pregnant, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
In English,
Yep.
groceries are consumables. You go to get groceries at the store. In Spanish, groserías are insults. So you cannot
Yeah.
translate literally the words because they're going to get you in trouble. So you need to translate the message. And when you translate the message, then you're not just translating, you're adapting. And I think this is some of the, and then the third option is to create uniquely. And that's what we did in this case at Miami University. We created a message in Spanish, but it was the same message that we're saying in English, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, and it was the brand. It was
was
a
the brand.
branded message.
It was the brand, absolutely. So I'm going to give you an example about Ford, right? Right now, when you see the Ford commercials, you will see the ads are awesome, and they show the strength of these trucks, FY50 and F150. And then you see at the very end, there's like a big seal, like a big bulge, and bam, it says Ford built tough. Well, in the United States Hispanic market, the ads have the same vibe. They're in Spanish. And then you have at the end, boom, Fuerza Ford. Okay, that is an adapted message. Fuerza Ford, strong. In Argentina, I love those ads. The ads are amazing, and they're a little bit different. In Argentina, the current commercials in 2024 and 2025 that you see are ads of national pride. Argentines are very proud people. They're proud of their culture, proud of the language. They're proud of their European ancestry. I mean, Argentina, I don't know if people know this, but Argentina is a white country, mostly white. I'll say 80% white, probably more white than the United States now. A lot of people don't know that, but they're very proud of that. And it's nothing wrong. I mean, they're pretty homogeneous because of the enormous Italian and German influences they had in the 19th and early 20th century. But they're proud of who they are. They invented the game of polo. A lot of people don't know that.
Oh, wow. I did know it's popular there for my family. I didn't know they invented it.
They invented it. So they're big on horses. Okay. So
yes.
in this
the caballeros, yeah.
Right, yeah, exactly. So in this ad, you see horses, beautiful horses running, and you see people climbing mountains, and you see people swimming, and you see people working out. And then the commercial, you see the same sealed, and it reads Raza Fuerte Ford.
Ooh.
This is our land.
Raza Fuerte Ford.
Sorry. So, sí. Entonces, when you're taking a look at Ford and you compare that with the horses and the F-150s together, you're talking about a special breed of
yes.
So they're talking about, basically, this is the message. The message is strength. And it was expressed in the U.S. mainstream market as Ford built tough. Mm-hmm. In U.S. Hispanic market at Fuerza Ford. In Argentina, dijeron raza. They said raza fuerte, right? So I gave an example of translation, adaptation, and creation.
Struggling to make sense of endless research? At the AI Engage Summit, you'll get a hands-on tutorial and meet Notebook LM, Google's AI assistant that transforms complex information like academic papers and lecture videos into content that will engage your target audience. The event is free and virtual. Register now at enrollify.org/engage.
Yeah. And tell me, what was the translation? So you were talking about the different slogans in the Miami University example. Can you share what the Spanish language version ended up being?
So in English, the campaign was the power of will to fill in the blank. The power of will to do this, the will to do this, the will to do that. In Spanish, the translation into the Spanish with el poder de cambiar tu mundo. El poder de cambiar tu mundo. So the power in English, also power, was about the will, the power will. In Spanish, the power was transferring to you. So you have the power to transform your own world.
And didn't that come back then and influence the English language campaign?
Absolutely. And then that Spanish was originally created into Spanish, was adapted into English to the power to change your world.
Because it was even stronger. Why I love this example is that, you know, we're in a world that's changing. English dominance, though. I think you mentioned campaigns start in English, and then there could be a mentality like, oh, and we have to do it in Spanish, and we have to do this in another language. And the beauty here is that process created an even stronger brand, an even stronger language and message for the entire university brand.
Agreed. And that happens sometimes when you do it very well.
Yeah. And you did. Bravo.
Thank you. I did it with a group of people. I was just
yes, of course.
Director, but it was
yes.
a effort.
Well, talk to me a little bit what more would you add to this about the relationship between multicultural marketing and the overall brand strategy?
So the relationship is that when you have a brand, you need to, as we talked earlier, the brand story, right? You have to take a look about what your core values are, what your mission is, what your vision is, what is the ethos of the institution. Ethos, basically what you stand for, what is your culture, what does your community look like, and whatever. So in multicultural marketing is just a part of that overall strategy in whatever you want to do for in general terms, the country is becoming multicultural, so it has to be a key ingredient of your strategy. But we have different institutions and we have different markets. For example, Miami University, right, is a primarily white institution in Oxford, Ohio, very white, right? So their message in multicultural has to be special about showcasing the value that your institution has for diversity. So you have messages like "You're welcome here," et cetera, et cetera. You create a message of acceptance, inclusions, and worthiness. Okay, when you are at an institution that is not primarily one institution like ODU, which is very diverse, we have almost the same amount of students who are Black and white, and then Latinos, and then you have students who are diverse in age. You have traditional students, you have adult learners, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Then you have to, when you talk about multicultural marketing, you don't have to talk about your welcome here. Diversity is not, diversity is just is. So what you do is you create that as part of your marketing and as part of your messaging, but you have to understand what still resonates with them.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
absolutely. I mean, I think about ODU, and it sounds, I haven't been there, but it sounds rich and diverse in a lot of ways, but that's probably different than a rich and diverse institution in, say, Chicago or Los Angeles or New York. They're still different cultures around those campuses.
It has to be different. Like Latinos,
Yeah.
right? Spanish, we're not a monolith. We come from 21 different countries. So you have to create messaging that is targeted for your audience and for your community and where are you are. What is your reality? And connect with that reality. Do the hard work first, and then in the end, the creativity will come in. But you have to put you have to front load a lot of work before you get to create.
Yeah. Let's talk about, how do you think the success of this campaign or any of the number of campaigns you've worked on influence the way brands think about evolving over time and
Oh,
their future strategies?
I love this question. Brands are made of people. Okay, it's all about people. In the 1950s, they coined the term, 1960s actually, late 50s, early 60s, they coined the term marketing mix. And all you guys marketers out there know what I'm talking about. Is like, this is so incredibly basic, but the 4 P's of marketing, right? The product, right? The price, the promotion, the placement, or the distribution of the product. Now there are 5 P's. People. It's about people. It's about people. It's always been about people. Even more than product, because the product is for the people.
The price is for the people. The promotion is for the people. It's like that P's right in the center, actually.
Exactly. So what I'm going here is that I think it's really important to put that at front and center in everything you do, the people. And without that, I think you're going to have a hard time being successful, because that's when you start having cookie cutter strategies, right? That's when you do this, you do that. But you really have to do that. So in terms of brand evolution, people change and generations change. Generations go and generations come, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to give you an example right now. It's a car brand. It's Buick. Buick was literally a dying brand 20 years ago. In fact, I don't know if you remember, but I think about 20 years ago, General Motors killed 4 brands. Oldsmobile, Saturn, Pontiac. Buick was in the chopping block, but they decided not to cut it because it's doing really well in China. But that was it. In the United States, it was dying. Oldsmobile and Buick were your grandpa's brands.
Yeah.
And literally what was happening was that those brands were so happy with that huge generation, they were selling them like hotcakes, but the generation was dying off, literally. So the brand was dying with their customers. So Buick had to reinvent themselves. And from being almost a dying brand, right now is the hottest American-made brand in the United States, #1 in sales projections and growth.
That's incredible.
And I'm gonna give you numbers, because I was just taking a look at it. From 2023 to 24, General Motors grew sales 4.3%, Ford 4.2%, and Buick 9.8%.
Wow.
Almost double. How do they do it? They changed the design brutally. They included new technology. They got rid of sedans. Why create a product that people don't want?
Yeah.
They focus on SUVs, which is what people want, and they're killing it. They're doing great. So
That's
that's my
incredible.
solution from you, from almost dying to thriving.
So what do you think? What's the translation there for our listeners who are in higher ed marketing?
I love it. In higher marketers, we marketers we're in marketing departments or university communications, and sometimes we don't we're not in university leadership in ways that we make policy and stuff like that. But what I would say is like pay attention to the market and the audience. For example, if I go right now, Maria, and I decided during Christmas that I want to give one of my daughters a radio, literally radio. I don't
Yeah.
think they would have been I don't think they would have been thrilled by that.
I don't know where you'd buy it.
Exactly. I don't even know where to buy it, but I'm sure if I
I
go
guess
online, I
Amazon.
can get a radio. But if I give him a 1-year free subscription of Spotify, that's a cool gift.
Mhm.
Okay. So what I'm saying is, what do people want? How do they want to consume information, and how do they want to learn? I believe that formal education is here to stay forever. But how are we going to be educating people, and how are we going to be creating those programs and the delivery systems that will educate and train the future generations of Americans and the world?
Yeah, and even market to them. I know it's early 2025 and everyone's talking about the search cliff, but when you talk about radio as a gift, the gift of a radio versus the gift of Spotify, it's really that how are people consuming? There's value in the content, but we have to stay on top of where are people consuming the
The
content.
technology, because in a radio you can still listen to Lady Gaga, right? No, well, I don't even know that's just 15 years ago, but I don't know who the hottest artist is.
I heard Sabrina Carpenter on the radio recently.
There you go. But it's more fun to listen to that in Spotify commercial,
Yeah.
and listen to the song you want the moment you want, right there. When I was a kid, I had a double tape boombox. I don't know how you call
Yes.
this.
Yeah,
Recorder.
exactly.
And I was waiting for the songs to come to record them.
So you could listen when you wanted
You
to.
would listen, yeah. So that's how I made my tapes when I was like 12 years old. But things have changed. I don't think the kids even know what a cassette tape is. They see them and they're
Or
like,
the
"What the heck
pencil
is
in
this?"
it. Yeah. We've covered so much about the importance of multicultural marketing and really looking at it through the lenses of place and language, race, ethnicity, age. What advice would you offer to the universities and teams who really want to expand their campaigns to include multicultural marketing?
Yeah, I think that the number one thing I would say is like you have to be intentional about it. If you want to do it, you have to be intentional about it. I think it takes not only want to do it, but taking that step. And I'll say you have to listen and ask questions. If that's something you really want to do, you have to see what the potential for multicultural marketing in your community is. Like if you are in a town that it would be very hard to bring in multicultural students for XYZ reason, just because of distance or location, think twice. Multicultural marketing is marketing. It requires paid advertising in media. It's like marketing to women from 35 to 55, or finding a demographic group. It's marketing, it's paid marketing. So you have to make an analysis that inclusive communications is for everyone, right?
Yeah.
So understand the difference between any university has to have inclusive communications and inclusive marketing. But honestly, not everybody is ready to do multicultural marketing. And that's something I always say, because it all depends on where you are and what is the realistic possibilities for you to be successful in that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you have to be realistic about who your market is and what your product is.
So I think people confuse inclusive communications versus multicultural marketing. They're not the same thing.
Yeah.
Everyone needs to do inclusive communications. And for that, you have to ask questions too, and you have to do research too, and you have to have strong partnership with, if your university has a D&I officer or office, work with them. I know that is something that is becoming a little bit more challenging in some parts of the country, but inclusive communications just makes makes sense. Everybody should feel welcome.
That's a great note to end and wrap up on. We could keep talking. I'm sure our listeners would love to follow up with you. They might have questions. So, is there a way that people can connect to you after listening?
Sure. My email at Old Dominion University is jponce, JPONCE @odu.edu. And you can find me by Christian Ponce on LinkedIn, linkedin.com, Ponce, Ponce 7. And
Perfect.
you can connect with me there.
Wonderful. Well, Christian, thank you so much for joining me this week to talk about multicultural marketing and brand storytelling. I know listeners are going to really enjoy this episode and really appreciate your stories, your insight, and your advice.
Maria, thank you so much for your consideration and for allowing me to be part of the series. I love it.
Join me next week for the next episode of Strategic Storytelling. And if you enjoyed this, make sure to subscribe to the Pulse Check on Enrollify and share it with a friend. And until next time, keep sharing stories.
The Higher Ed Pulse is part of the Enrollify Podcast Network. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our show helps higher ed marketers and admission pros find their next big idea and features a selection of the industry's best as your hosts. Learn from Brian Gross, Eddie Francis, Jenny Lee Fowler, and so many of your favorite leaders in higher ed. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful and personalized interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.